I call to order this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Surprise on May 18th, 2023. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Chapman,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Commissioner Smith has an excused absence.
Commissioner Rosenbaum,
Here.
Chair Sartor,
Chair Sartor also has an excused absence.
Vice Chair Holland,
Here.
Commissioner Keating,
Here.
Commissioner Bash.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Abrams, can we have current events and staff reports?
Vice Chair, none tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we will go to consent agenda item number 1. Oh, I apologize. I'd like to make a call to the public for any comments regarding any items that are not on tonight's agenda. Do we have anyone who wishing to speak?
No, Vice Chair Holland.
Thank you. Now we'll go to consent agenda item number 1.
Consideration and action to approve or disapprove the May 4th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting minutes.
So move. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes with 5 votes in favor.
Let's move on to the regular agenda item number 2.
Consideration and action regarding a conditional use permit with site plan for a Marley Park Square Lot 11 retail shell building with drive-through facility, case FS 22-0784.
Good evening, Leslie.
Good evening, Vice Chair, Commission. Okay, so item number 2 is the Marley Park Square Lot 11 conditional use permit, case number FS 22-0784. The site's generally located on the southwest corner of Litchfield Road and Waddell Road. The subject parcel and adjacent parcels are all zoned in the Marley Park PAD. The nearly 7,000 square foot commercial shell building will have a drive-through facility. 32 parking spaces were required and 32 were provided, as well as a bicycle rack providing 5 spaces. The single drive-through lane has queuing capacity for 12 vehicles. Site access to the actual Commerce Center is taken off of Litchfield Road, but 2 full access points are provided from an internal driveway. And the pedestrian access circulation is represented there in a red dashed line. The drive-through met all the requirements in Title 17 code for convenience restaurant drive-through. The elevations utilize a mixture of materials in a neutral color palette. The architecture is complementary to the proposed Marley Park Square projects and has already obtained approval from DMB, the Marley Park master developer. The landscape incorporates a low water use plant palette. It is designed to be consistent with the approved right-of-way landscaping for the Marley Park Square. Two citizen participation meetings were held. Virtual was on the 22nd of February and the in-person on the 28th. We had no attendees and there was no opposition, and we have heard no feedback on this project. Staff recommends approval subject to stipulations A through E. I'm available for questions and the applicant is here as well.
Thank you. This matter does require a public hearing, so we will open it to the public. Alyssa, do we have anyone wishing to speak on this item?
No, Vice Chair Holland.
Thank you. Then we will close the public hearing. Comments from commissioners? There being none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the conditional use permit with site plan for Marley Park Square Lot 11, subject to stipulations A through E.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, please cast your votes.
Motion passes with 5 votes in favor.
Let's move on to regular agenda item number 4.
Okay, this item is the Marley Park Square Lot 12 conditional use permit, case number FS 221182. This site is also located on the southwest corner of Litchfield and Waddell. The zoning is the same as the previous. The adjacent parcels are all zoned in the Marley Park PAD.
Leslie, hold on one second.
Yes.
I called number 4. This is actually agenda item number 3.
Oh,
So, and you're
My
doing the right
apologies.
one.
Oh.
I'm just making sure I'm saying the
just
right
like.
one. This is agenda item number 3.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay.
You need me to announce it?
Yeah, would you please?
Yeah. Consideration and action regarding a conditional use permit with site plan for a Marley Park Square Lot 12 retail shell building with drive-through facility, case FS 22-1182.
Thank you. Now, Leslie, please
Hey,
proceed.
trying to trick me.
I did.
Okay. This building is 6,286 square feet. It's also a commercial shell building with a drive-through facility. 23 spaces were required for this one, and 24 were provided. Single drive-through with 12 vehicle queuing capacity. Similar to the previous site, internal access is taken off of the west side, and main access comes from Litchfield Road into the Commerce Center. And this drive-through also meets the requirements set forth in Title 17 code. The architecture is similar. It utilizes a similar mixture of materials that are neutral and has also been approved by the DME master developer. Landscape uses the same plant palette as Lot 11, and it was also designed to be cohesive with the right-of-way landscaping. The meetings for this project were on the 23rd of February virtual and on the 1st of March for in-person. And again, we had no opposition for this one and have had no feedback. Staff recommends approval subject to stipulations A through E. And I'm available for questions or comments, and so is the applicant.
Thank you, Leslie. Again, this item requires a public hearing, so we will open a public hearing. Alyssa, is there anyone wishing to speak on this item?
No, Vice Chair Holland.
Thank you. Then we will close the public hearing. Any comments from members of the commission? There being none, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the conditional use permit with site plan for Marley Park Square Lot 12, subject to stipulations A through E.
Second.
There being a motion and a second, please cast your votes. There we go.
Motion passes with 5 votes in favor.
Now we will call regular agenda item number 4.
Consideration and action regarding a conditional use permit with site plan for a drive-through facility at an existing Cafe Rio restaurant generally located on the northwest corner of Litchfield Road and Waddell Road, case FS 22-0946.
Okay, item number 4 is the Cafe Rio drive-through conditional use permit, case number FS 220946. This one is located on the northwest corner of Litchfield Road and Waddell Road. All of the zoning on the adjacent parcels are in the Sierra Verde PAD, as well as the subject parcel. The The project is retrofitting an existing Cafe Rio restaurant with a drive-through window and canopy and a single lane drive-through. They've reconfigured the parking to the north to accommodate the new one-way drive, and we're able to maintain the 45 spaces required for the multi-tenant building. The drive-through that they are proposing meets the Title 17 code. This exhibit just gives you a better look at the site plan with the context of the actual Commerce Center and the circulation. You'll see that the drive-through enters into a one-way internal driveway. And pedestrian access, again, is represented with the red dashed line. This slide shows the existing elevations, and if you look toward the right, this is the area where they are adding the window and the new canopy. They're matching all of the existing materials with this structure. Landscaping will be added in the new parking islands. It will match the existing plant palette, and they are meeting all of our codes for parking lot landscaping. We had two outreach meetings for this project, one virtual on March 8th and one in person on the 15th. We did have 2 attendees on the 15th. They had concerns with the traffic flow of the drive-through and some of the existing landscape that's on site today. Their concerns were addressed, and we have not received any additional feedback. Staff recommends approval subject to stipulations A through E. I'm available for questions, and the applicant is here as well.
Thank you. This agenda item does require a public hearing, so we will open that public hearing. Alyssa, is there anyone wishing to address the commission?
No, Vice Chair Holland.
Thank you. We will close the public hearing. Any comments from any commissioners? Commissioner Bash.
I agree with the individual who talked about the traffic flow. What really wasn't shown on any of your exhibits is Waddell and the entrance coming in off of Waddell, and that is a straight through. There's no stop there. It's an awful tight little intersection with stopping on 3 other points. And I myself have been to Cafe Rio and pulled out and looking this way and then looking toward Waddell and starting to make the move when somebody swings in there off Waddell. So I do agree with the traffic flow issue. It's going to be a little dicey.
Is it?
I agree with Commissioner Bash.
Okay.
That was my greatest concern as well, having gone through here and seeing the circulation that's going to be proposed here. You indicated that each one of those have been addressed. What changes or modifications were made to address the circulation concerns?
Well, the concerns at the meeting were more of the conflict with the drive-through that is to the east. I think there is a Sonic, I believe, or some other type of restaurant over there. They were concerned about conflicting traffic, but we found that they both exit in different drive aisles, so it was not going to be an issue.
Well, I know with the Sonic that's to the east and, northeast of this building here, that has different entries and exits off of Litchfield there. This one with the Cafe Rio is going to exit to the south and just kind of southwest there. Yep, right where your cursor is. And that right there where your cursor is the biggest concern, because you, as Commissioner Bash indicated, you are going to have quite a few cars, as is the case right now, that'll be turning north into the Fry's parking lot there, and will be coming at a fairly decent rate of speed. And so trying to turn south after exiting this drive-through is going to be kind of scary. I understand that from the comments that were raised at the public hearing that the Cafe Rio says that they will make whatever accommodations are necessary to make sure that traffic flow is as good as it can be. Do we know what those might have been, or have those been addressed?
They were talking about adding a stop signage to painting on the drive aisle. But I am not sure where that would be located. I know that was something they were discussing with our transportation department.
Okay.
So I don't have that answer. I would have to get back and look at the plans again and see the striping plan and see where they were gonna paint the signage on the pavement.
Okay. Well, I like the idea. I think it's a great idea. But you said the applicant's here. If the
Yes.
applicant would,
Oh,
I'm looking for an avowal that you're going to make whatever changes or take whatever precautions are necessary to make sure that we don't have accidents right there.
Perfect. Yes, we're concerned with that as well, and we don't have any.
Can I get
accidents.
your name and your address, please?
Bryce Evans? My address:
Yes, please. For Cafe Rio.
1245 East Brickyard Road, Salt Lake City, Utah.
Okay. Now, obviously, I'm concerned. Have you been going over what can be done to address the traffic concerns here?
Yes. How do I control the? You see the screen there? We talked about stop bars painted here and here to prevent the one-way traffic flow and causing accidents, as well as illuminated directional signage at the point of entry and exit of the drive-through.
Okay. Anything as you proceed forward? I like the crossbar, and maybe it's beyond what we can do, but I am concerned as right where your cursor is,
Sorry.
when somebody goes on ahead and turns to the west or facing that arrow, turning right.
Coming this way and
Yep,
coming
right
out
there.
of traffic.
Right over there, and then turning to the south there. Those are the biggest concerns for me, anyway.
And traffic right here.
Mm-hmm.
If we added something to stop traffic here as well, a stop sign or a stop bar here as well.
Well, we're probably getting outside of where the thing, the permit for you is concerned, but we probably need to get engaged with traffic department again and make sure that traffic flows properly there.
Okay.
So, and you're willing to take whatever steps necessary to address those?
Yeah, if we need to add the stop sign or discuss further with the traffic department, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
That's not a concern.
Thank you.
Yep. Is that
Any other comments from the commission? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the conditional use permit for the Cafe Rio drive-through addition, generally located on the northwest corner of Litchfield Road and Waddell Road, subject to stipulations A through E.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes with 5 votes in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will move on to regular agenda item number 5.
Consideration and action pertaining to a zoning text amendment to the Surprise Land Development Ordinance to revise standards for active single-family residential signs and model home complex signs, case FS 23-0189.
Good evening, Vice Chair, members of the Commission. The item before you is FS 23-0189, zoning text amendment to active residential subdivision signs. Before kind of proceeding with the presentation, kind of going to give a little bit of background of what exactly we're talking about here with active subdivision signs. These are signs used by home builders to advertise new communities. As you can see on your screen here, these are kind of typical signage that is found throughout the valley, from large post signs to attention flags. This is a staff-initiated zone text amendment. This is in response to recent inquiries from home builders within the city of Surprise due to the recent shift in housing market, the desire for greater flexibility in marketing their Surprise communities, specifically communities that are not conveniently located adjacent to a major arterial. This is typically found in SPA 2 and SPA 3. So this amendment is proposing a revision to standard it's in section 109-1.9A12 for on-site perimeter signage within these active subdivisions. Currently, only one sign is allowed per subdivision. The proposed amendment is proposing revised standards that allow for one sign per primary entry, one sign per street frontage, with additional standards that allow for a maximum of 3 signs to be located per street frontage, so long as 2,640 linear feet or half a mile is provided between each sign. Kind of looking at a possible potential real life example, this is the Tierra Verde East community, which is currently under construction. Under the current LDO, they are only allowed one perimeter sign. With the proposed amendment for this site specifically, they would be allowed a maximum of 12, looking at that one per primary entry and then 2 along the arterial roadway of Happy Valley Road with that 2,640 feet of separation. Revisions to section 109-1.9A12, adding, currently the LDO doesn't allow for off-site signage. This amendment proposes standards to allow for off-site signage. One sign would be allowed per model home complex. The maximum width, height, and area would match what on-site signage standards allow. Additional limitations would be added for off-site signage. The sign shall be located on a vacant parcel at least 1 acre in size or greater. It cannot be located within the public right-of-way, and owner authorization is required at the time of the model home complex review. Again, going back to our example of Tierra Verde West, as you can see, a potential off-site location for the sign is off 163rd. The parcel that it's located on is greater than 1 acre. And again, this allows for more visibility for someone who is going down 163rd. Proposed revisions are also to section 109-1.9A10 model home complex, specifically the temporary class 4 signs that are allowed. This is just revising the maximum height and sign area for complexes that are located adjacent to collector and arterial roadways. So that's increasing the height from 120 inches to 144 inches, and then the maximum sign area from 32 square feet to 48 square feet per side. This is kind of a visual representation of that as well. This is an example of a model home complex within the city of Peoria. As you can see, by increasing that size, it allows home builders to place a large post sign within the model home complex, but is still visible above the adjacent subdivision wall. Before proceeding with this amendment, staff did conduct research looking at local municipalities. This is the city of Peoria's current standards. As you can see, they allow for both on-site and off-site signage. This is the city of Glendale. Again, they allow for both on-site and off-site signage, and their standards far exceed what's being proposed with this amendment. The next couple slides kind of show the legislative edits. Again, this active single-family residential subdivision section is broken out between on-site and then off-site signage. A neighborhood outreach meeting was conducted on April 25th here at City Hall. It was a hybrid meeting, both in person and virtual, and staff has not received any opposition from the public. I am available for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Tanner. This matter does require a public hearing, so I'll open it to a public hearing. Alyssa, do we have anyone wishing to address the commission?
No, Vice Chair Holland.
Thank you. Then I'll close the public hearing. Any questions or comments from the commission?
I have a question.
Commissioner Keating.
Yes, if you could go back probably about 5 or 6 slides, just as an example. A little bit further. Yeah, right there. That's good. A couple slides before this, you said you had 4 dots on the Tierra Verde West, and you said they would be allowed up to 12 signs. Currently, they're only allowed 1, and you said they'd be allowed up to 12. Did you mean 4?
Sorry,
Because there were 4 dots on the...
For this site specifically, with the standards that we're proposing, a maximum of 4. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
Then go forward a couple of slides, then back to the one. Yeah, that one. under the new proposed standards, we have probably at least 6 different builders in that part of town that will be building or are currently building, maybe even more than that. Under the proposed standard, would all 6 builders be allowed to put a sign if the landowner permits it, where that one single dot is now?
Correct. So there's no standard for any sort of minimum separation between these signs with the current proposed amendment.
So I guess the way we currently have it is that it really does limit the amount of signage per builder, for good, for better or for worse. Potentially for worse in the future if we change to this proposed text amendment, we could have 6 or 8 different builder signs right there in that same spot, and that could be on every single corner within how far from a builder?
There's no limitations to the minimum distance from.
So we could be allowing 6 or 8 signs on every single corner of every major intersection where there's new construction in that part of town,
Hmm.
or more, depending upon how many builders there were in that part of town.
And yeah, the standard was added 1 per model home complex, but I understand that there are multiple model home complexes within this area.
Yeah, especially in this area. I'm just not sure if that's doing the citizens of Surprise justice to potentially have 6 or 8 or even more signs on every major corner in developing parts of town. That's my comment on this part of it, and something I see as a potential. I know in the past we have, as a commission as a whole, has had concerns about clutter in our city, and I see this as a potential for clutter in our city the way it's currently written.
I agree.
And I agree.
As well. Good catch.
Tanner, did you put this together?
Yes, I did.
Good work. I appreciate this. I will say that. It does give a good idea of what's happening with the surrounding communities.
I agree that builders should have the opportunity to advertise their products, and directional signs, to get people to the model home complexes. And I certainly, don't necessarily disagree with, the land that they own themselves, that they could have more signage on or larger signage on. I think just this one portion of the way it's written really concerns me, because I don't think the people of Surprise want a whole bunch of clutter of large signs on every major intersection in the city where there's a lot of development happening.
I can do the mic.
Okay.
So, Ellen, I have a question for you.
Okay.
I know that this is basically a recommendation to the city council as to whether or not there should be an LDO text amendment. I think at least the consensus that we're hearing here is that the majority of the commission would recommend part, but not recommend part, and we have the opportunity to craft a motion that does just that, correct?
Yes, Chair Holland, members of the commission. Now, I do want to make one point about the what had been mentioned by Commissioner Keating. Lloyd has confirmed that only 1 sign is allowed per model home complex, not per each builder within that complex. Is that correct?
Vice Chair, Commissioners. Typically, you have a model home complex set up for 1 builder at a time. To be competitive with the other cities in the market right now, the request from the home builders was to at least provide some off-site signage to provide some sort of direction into areas such as the Spa 2 area, where you have to come off 163rd, and you basically have to travel 2 or 3 miles to get up to where they're building those homes today. So they were looking, some way to be able to direct residents or potential buyers to their location. That was the main thing. We can look at maybe doing 1 or 2 signs and see if that goes by with the home builders per parcel. This way they're spread out more. Most of the model home complexes are spread out just based off of the development that's occurring up there between Terra Verde East, West, Paloma Creek. So there's at least 3 that could go in there. And then if you go on the west side of 163rd, we have the Lennar, and up in Desert Oasis, you have Richmond and KB. So that's what it looks like today, but we could also, like I said, go back and see if that's acceptable to the home builders to maybe limit the number per parcel.
You know,
Chair?
Yes, oh, okay, so Chair and Commission, so going back to your question about the motion, if you don't want to recommend approval of the off-site sign, then you can make your motion to approve this as presented, but, except for the off-site sign option.
thank you.
Yeah, I just have one comment, maybe for the director. Is it possible having one sign with, just says model homes with a list of the types of developments that are in that area?
Vice Chair Commission, we currently have the kiosk sign that actually does that. But again, based on the home builders, they're saying that's not enough for them. It's just too many in a row, and it's not providing enough direction of where to go find the model home complexes.
Okay.
My opinion would be to find a happy medium between not having clutter for the people of Surprise, especially when you're approaching a major intersection. There's already enough distractions the way it is, and still allowing the home builders to get people to where they need to go to look at the new homes.
I agree with Commissioner Keating. I think perhaps a cluster sign or a kiosk can be adjusted as opposed to having a cluster of signs. And so if that can be revisited, that would be my preference as well.
Would that be possible to set a distance on the sign so that you didn't have a cluster of them? You might have 150 feet between them, and that way that would stop the cluster problem, and it would allow the builders to have their signage.
That's all something that could be revisited. I think at this point, we probably should move to the motion portion. It sounds as though majority isn't interested necessarily in the off-site signs as proposed, and maybe that just needs to be revisited. But the rest of it, we can, if everyone feels okay about, then we can move forward with that.
Vice Chair Commission, we do have a representative from the Home Builders Association if you'd like a little bit more insight to their what they were asking.
Happy to hear from them. Can I get you to state your name and address, please?
And I got a card for you, too.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Jackson Mall. I'm the CEO of the Home Builders Association of Central Arizona and a registered lobbyist with the city of Surprise. I apologize for the delay in getting here, but I appreciate you taking this up and considering it. As has been alluded, all businesses in the city of Surprise are concerned about signage. Right. But unlike a lot of retail establishments, home builders face unique challenges. So first of all, as Lloyd has talked about, home builders often build in areas that are not heavily trafficked. They're often built in parts of the city that have never been developed before. And so even if one were to try to access some of these model home complexes by GPS, they just simply can't find them. We also recently discovered an interesting challenge that a specific builder is having, where unbeknownst to them, the post office changed their mailing address from Surprise, Arizona to Litchfield Park. The problem that, of course, presented for them was that if you Google New Homes Surprise, they no longer showed up. And so overnight, their traffic just vanished. And so that was part of the impetus for why we came to the city of Surprise to try to create some additional signage options that would be available for the builders. But as you have described, part of the concern, of course, with signage is clutter. And so that was why we looked at these types of signs as one of the potential options that would be available to builders, as opposed to going with, say, the weekend directional signs, which tend to just be a 2 foot by 2 foot, cardboard square attached to a wooden stake. I understand the concern that you would potentially run into with a cluster of these signs. And one of the ways in which municipalities address that, Commissioner Rosenbaum, I think you brought this up, which is to create separation distance requirements. That would be something that we would be happy to look at. And I would look to Ellen for you to provide direction on this, but that could perhaps be one of the things that you could include in your recommendation, would be that we would recommend this if there were appropriate separation distances or something like that to avoid the clutter issue. But the other thing I would keep in mind is that while direction is paramount to the home builders, the other consideration, particularly when you're in a market like this that's rapidly evolving and rapidly changing, is the ability to provide additional information to potential home buyers or even people who don't know that they're yet home buyers. So for instance, a lot of times on these signs, it'll be a directional sign, but there will be a rider that'll be attached to it that might say something along the lines of now offering 4.99% financing or interest rates, where someone wouldn't otherwise know that because they read the paper and they see that a 30-year fixed is at 6.5%, but they don't understand that or even realize perhaps that the builder is offering to buy down those interest rates. That's information that's vital for consumers that they need to be able to have. And so when you raise the question of what's the benefit to the city of Surprise and the residents of Surprise, it's that they're provided information that they might not otherwise come across. They're provided with the direction that's necessary to get them there. And I certainly believe that there are appropriate mitigation measures that we could take to address the clutter issue that you've described, and we would be happy to look at those. But we would recommend and would appreciate and respectfully request that you do support the idea of an off-site sign. We're happy to continue to work on prior to City Council what those separation distances look like or any other mitigation measure to address some of the cluster issues that you've described. So with that, I appreciate your time and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So are you asking us to not approve any of it or recommend approval of any of it, and so that you can work on it again and address these distance issues, or are you saying?
Excuse me for interrupting, Mr. Chairman, but Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, my recommendation or my request of you is that you do approve what's requested, and then in the motion you include a recommendation that there be a separation distance to avoid the clutter issue.
I see. Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions or comments? There being none, I'll entertain a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to take a stab at it. You might have to help me out. I move to recommend approval to the City Council of the proposed zoning text amendment to the Surprise Land Development Ordinance to revise standards for active single-family residential signs and model home complex signs, with the exception of the off-site signage, and include a recommendation to the City Council to address the potential problems of clustering too many signs on one piece of land.
Okay, Chair and members of the commission, the motion, perhaps you might want to phrase it as, for the off-site signs, that a separation requirement be added. That's probably much more clean.
Okay. So we'll go back to the first part as I stated.
Before, just out of curiosity, with my understanding from what you said is that you're still, those comments is that there are multiple signs rather than, that we're going to take up, and we're only looking at spacing, which might imply that we're okay with multiple signs, and I don't know how we're going to interpret that. So.
Oh, okay, well, the commission can go several ways here. I mean, you obviously do not like the off-site signage as proposed currently. You can either have a motion to approve, the item except for that provision, and then that would give staff and the home builders an opportunity to work on that to bring back something to council which would address your concerns about separation. I mean, Lloyd and I were just talking about maybe there'd be a limitation of 2 of these signs per any vacant parcel, with each sign set apart at least 100 feet. I mean, that's an example. I'm not saying you need to do that, but that's kind of the kind of separation requirement that could come out of this, or staff and the home builders could come up with something else. So maybe at this point, you just want to improve the part that you agree upon, which is the on-site signs, and then, omit the off-site, and then the city council can then, determine how to handle that based upon further input.
Thank you.
And I guess, the potential problem I see with that is that, there's a lot of builders that are already building in certain parts of our city, more than 2. And if we were to put a number, or even the city council were to put a number on it, you might have 6 builders that want the same space for only 2 signs. And then how do you fairly then decide who gets that space? I just don't want to recommend writing in a certain type of language that creates problems.
It sounds like, to me at least, this needs to go back to staff and kind of rework it and reword it and adjust it. So probably the best bet would be the suggestion that was just provided, that we approve the portion that we do agree with, and recommend disapproval of the portion we don't agree with, and give them the opportunity to go back and address it again.
I guess that's why I wanted a certain amount of vagueness for the proposal to city council, just to raise an issue that we see that the city council and staff can address, and then bring it back, before city council to see if they agree on something.
You want to amend your motion?
No, I think the way I stated it was maybe a little too vague for what you were looking for initially, but I think I want to keep it somewhat vague and give the city council and staff the time and the prudence to make it more specific.
Okay. Do I have a second to the motion?
Is that clear enough for everybody?
Yeah, Chair,
Was it a little bit
Commission,
clearer than mud?
perhaps the clerk could reread that. Can you reread that, Alyssa?
Motion?
The motion that was made by Commissioner Keating?
I know it was probably hard to write it as I was speaking. I could try to say it again and remember what I said.
Yeah, or else, or do you just want to make it again? I think your
just
motion is to approve, the item except
With the
except
exception
for
of the
exception.
off-site signage.
Yes.
Okay, we'll leave it that simple. So I move to recommend approval to revise the standards for active single-family residential signs and model home complex signs, with the exception of the off-site signage.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes with 5 votes in favor.
Okay, we will move on to regular agenda item number 6.
Consideration and action regarding a rezone from split zoning of community commercial C2, rural residential RR, to exclusively community commercial C2. The vacant parcel is approximately 2.66 acres and generally located southwest of the intersection of 163rd Avenue and Grand Avenue, case FS 21-552.
Leslie, please.
Okay. Item number 6 is the Maverick rezone, case number FS 21552. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. The site is just south of the intersection of 163rd and Grand Avenue. The current zoning is split. Part of the parcel is rural residential and part of the parcel is commercial. Surrounding zoning is also C2 and rural residential. The proposed zoning is to make the entire site community commercial, C2. Let's see. This table shows the city's current development standards for C2. The conceptual site plan that has been submitted with this review is for a Maverick gas station. What we have reviewed so far meets or exceeds those standards. The site plan is for conceptual purposes. It shows the 6,000 square foot convenience store and 2 canopy covered fueling areas. Proposed access would be all taken off of the frontage road. Here's a conceptual illustration of the elevations. At this point, they are meeting our requirements and keeping with their brand. We had a hybrid outreach meeting for this project on April 14th of 2022. We did not have anyone in attendance and we did not receive any feedback. Recently, we did receive a comment regarding the site's close proximity to the Maricopa Trail, and we were able to confirm with the county that the trail does utilize 163rd right-of-way. So the comments that were made about the trail will be addressed during the site plan review of this project. And staff recommends that Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval subject to stipulations A and B. I am available to answer questions, and the applicant is here as well.
Thank you. This agenda item does require a public hearing, so we will open the public hearing. Alyssa, is there anyone wishing to speak to the commission on this matter?
I have a email that I would read from Mike Olet. Dear Planning and Zoning Commission members, in considering the proposed rezone of the 2.77 acres located at 163rd Avenue and Grand Avenue, I hope the city takes into account that the Maricopa Trail Attachment A is located along the westerly and a small portion of the southerly property lines. The trail is visible on the aerial portion of the applicant's site plan where it crosses the frontage road from the south. Any rezone of the property should be conditioned on the site plan incorporating the existing permanent Maricopa Trail signage already located on the property, include painted trail crossing marking stripes on the frontage road, include a curb cutout and sidewalk connection where the trail connects to the property across from the frontage road, include permanent trail crossing signs on the frontage road to replace the city's current temporary signs that are being kept in place by sandbags, include wider sidewalk to accommodate both hiker and cyclists where the trail is located on the property, and or include bike lane markers along 163rd Avenue. Presently, bike lane markers are located only along the frontage road of the submitted site plan. I hope the applicant will embrace having a portion of such an important community and region-wide recreational amenity along its property, especially since the trail users will potentially be customers of the applicant. I recommend that the city approve the rezone with the above conditions or similar conditions that city staff considers appropriate to ensure hikers and cyclists of the Maricopa Trail can continue to use the trail at this location in a safe manner.
Thank you. Any other comments?
No, that was it.
Thank you. Then I will close the public hearing. Any commissioner comments or questions? Commissioner Rosenbaum.
I consider the trail system that we have a very important part of our community, and I would like to see this included with our, as a recommendation for this change.
Thank you. Mr. Abrams? you look-
Vice Chair, Commissioners, yeah, that portion of it will be reviewed through the site plan. When they submit the formal site plan, we'll ensure that's incorporated. We've already, in fact, I reached out today and spoke with the county parks, and they've provided us a list of their requirements. So we'll incorporate that, and they'll be part of that review of the site plan.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Any additional commissioner comments? Thank you, and I feel the trail system is absolutely imperative, so I'm glad to hear that's being addressed. I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the rezone from split zoning of community commercial, C2, rural residential, RR, to exclusively community commercial, C2, subject to stipulations A through B as outlined in the staff report.
Second.
There being a motion and a second, please cast your votes.
Motion passes with 5 votes in favor.
We will move on to regular agenda item number 7.
Consideration and action regarding the use-only conditional use permit CUP for a drive-through convenience restaurant located on Parcel C in the Bella Fiesta Commerce Center located on the northwest corner of Dysart and Bell Road, case FS 22-0441.
Good evening, Chris.
Good evening. Good evening, Vice Chair and Commission. Item 7 before you is a use-only CUP for Bella Fiesta Commerce Center. The 10-acre vacant parcel is located at the northeast corner of Bell Road and Dysart Road. The zoning for the parcel is C2. Surrounding parcels to the west, north, and east are C3 and PAD. To the south is I1, C3 with a PUD overlay, and SHD CO for Surprise Heritage District in the commercial overlay. So as of now, the parcel is 10 acres. However, a final plat is in review to subdivide the one parcel into 5 parcels. Right now, what's being proposed is the drive-through on Parcel C, which has the red box around it. Access to the site will be a left in, a right in and right out from Bell, another right in and right out from Bell Road, and full access from Dysart. So the project involves a construction of a 4,350 square foot McDonald's restaurant. 29 spaces are required and 43 are being provided. The double drive-through lane has a queuing capacity of 12 vehicles, and 2 pedestrian crossing signs will be located at the exit of the drive-through. And here's the conceptual landscape plan for the project. It meets the requirements of the Land Development Ordinance. And here are the conceptual elevations. The buildings will be painted with primarily earth tones and designed with flat roofs and metal canopies. Both vertical and horizontal metal paneling are being placed strategically throughout the building to provide a 360-degree architecture and create an appealing facade. So this is the following criteria used to evaluate the CUP against the standards for drive-through windows. So the drive-through facilities are required to be located a minimum of 25 feet from the right-of-way, and drive-through entrances shall be separated by 300 feet. The entrance to the drive-through facility is located 288 feet from the public right-of-way, and the entrance from the restaurant drive-through to the entrance of the proposed car wash to the west is roughly 350 feet. Drive-through aisles shall be clearly identified through the use of striping, landscaping, and signage. Additionally, it needs to contain aisles that are a minimum of 11 feet wide. Any curved section shall be a minimum of 12 feet wide with a radius of 25 on the curved section. And when pedestrian walkways intersect the drive aisles, they should have appropriate crossing signs that shall be visible. So the aisles are provided at 13 feet, which meet it with a radius of 25 on the curved section. And the pedestrian walkway does intersect the drive-through aisles and will have enhanced paving plus the pedestrian cross signs. Drive-through exits shall not directly front onto a public right-of-way, and these will not front onto exit onto a public right-of-way. Each drive-through lane shall have the minimum distance between entry point and the ordering facility. Both drive-through lanes meet the minimum distance requirement of 40 feet from the entry point to the ordering facility at 49 feet and 52 feet. And the 2 proposed drive-through lanes exceed the minimum distance of 100 feet between the pickup service window and ordering facility. with a distance of 145 feet and 159 feet respectively. Drive-through speakers shall not be audible from the right-of-way. The proposed drive-through speakers are oriented to the rear of the parcel, therefore will not be audible from either Bell Road and Dysart Road. Drive-through facilities shall orient pickup windows away from arterial streets, and these drive-through windows are oriented away from the arterial streets facing internally to the site to the west. Drive-through lanes shall be screened from the right-of-way and adjacent uses, and these drive-through lanes will be screened from Bell Road through the incorporation of a landscape berm coupled with landscaping. Drive-through window shall incorporate an attached canopy of the drive-through window or tele area and shall not exceed 14 feet in height, measured from the ground to the underside of the canopy. And the drive-through incorporates a decorative canopy over the drive-through windows to provide adequate shade, and they do not exceed 14 feet as they measure 10 feet 4 inches in height. And lastly, the architecture of the drive-through uses shall reflect the architecture of the principal building. And the proposed canopies incorporate the colors and the materials which are consistent with the rest of the building. A neighborhood outreach meeting was held on July 12th, 2022 at the Holiday Express Inn. Site posting, the mailers, and newspaper publishings were in accordance with the land development ordinance, and there were no attendees or no concerns or opposition. Staff recommends that Planning and Zoning Commission approve the project subject to stipulations A through D. Staff's available as the applicant to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. This matter does require a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. Alyssa, is there anyone wishing to speak to the commission?
No, Vice Chair Holland.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing. Any comments or questions by the commission? I will say this. I saw, Chris, that the hope or future thought is going to be to subdivide that into 5 separate parcels, and it sure looked like it was setting it up for another multifamily housing development behind the 4 frontage parcels. I would like to see that entire parcel continue to stay commercial, and see if we can't continue to get commercial opportunities in there, is my only comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve case number FS 22-0441, a use-only CUP for Bella Fiesta Commercial or Commerce Center, subject to stipulations A through D as outlined in the staff report.
Second.
There being a motion and a second, please cast your votes.
Motion passes with 5 votes in favor.
We'll move on to regular agenda item number 8.
Consideration and action pertaining to a site plan for Truman Ranch Marketplace Family and Senior Apartments generally located at the southwest corner of Waddell Road and Cotton Lane within the Truman Ranch Marketplace PAD, case FS 22-1418.
Good evening, Trevor.
Good evening, Vice Chair, members of the Commission. This item before you is the site plan for the residential component of the Truman Ranch Marketplace PAD, case FS 22-1418. The subject site is located at the southwest corner of Waddell and Cotton and encompasses 28.6 acres. The site is zoned Truman Ranch Marketplace PAD. Surrounding zonings include Posada PAD to the east, the remainder of Truman Ranch Marketplace PAD to the north, and then various residential zonings to the west and south. So here's the entirety of the subject site plan. It encompasses 30.3 gross acres and 28.6 net acres, and includes 599 total dwelling units. As you'll remember, with the preliminary development plan that was approved last year, there was a stipulation on that this site not include more than 601 dwelling units. So in that regard, this subject site plan meets the preliminary development plan. So 599 dwelling units over 28.6 net acres equates to 20.97 dwelling units to the acre. The PAD includes perimeter setbacks. To the west is a 45-foot minimum setback. The site plan meets that at 50 feet 8 inches. To the south, when adjacent to residential, there's a minimum setback of 45 feet. This exceeds that at 87 feet 2 inches. There is no setback requirement internal to the overall PAD, so to the north there is no minimum setback. And then to the east there is a minimum 10-foot setback, and this exceeds that at 43 feet 8 inches. Access to the site is primarily off of Cotton Lane with a full access movement, and there will be additional gated access to the north where the commercial development of this overall PAD will be. This is the family apartments portion of the overall site. This portion includes 17 total residential buildings. 15 of those are the 3-story apartment buildings and 2 townhome buildings, which are at 2 stories. There are 5 different building types across the entire site and include 2, 3, and 4-bedroom units. In total, there are 388 dwelling units within this component of the overall site plan. And there's also a clubhouse building and a fitness building that are centrally located. This is the senior apartment component of the overall site that includes a single 4-story building and a 1-story component that houses the clubhouse and the leasing office. This portion of the development includes 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units and a total of 211 dwelling units. This is the landscaping plan, consistent with the preliminary development plan. The Chapter 125 includes a minimum landscaping percentage of the overall site to be 15%. This overall, there's 31.6% provided. That's 27%, just over 27% of the senior site is landscaped, and just over 33% of the family component is landscaped. There's also a minimum 22-foot landscape buffer along Cotton Lane, and this exceeds that at, it varies across the right-of-way of Cotton Lane, but there is a minimum of 25 across that frontage. The PAD also includes some language regarding buffering to the properties to the west, and encourages and requires landscaping to help kind of decrease the visual impact of the buildings within this site to the west. So the applicant has provided a continuous line of trees that include southern live oak and willow acacia. These will help, in addition to the site wall, this will help screen and buffer this development to the west. And this is where the landscape, the minimum 22-foot landscape buffer is shown. This site also includes, as mentioned before, the clubhouse and fitness building within the family site, but that is, those 2 standalone structures are centralized and surrounding the pool and spa area and other amenity site. And then within the senior component of the development, there is an additional amenity site for that development that includes the pool. There's also scattered throughout the site various pockets of open space, amenity areas, tot lots, courtyards, and other plazas as required by the PAD. And then, as you'll see at the roundabout at the main entrance and scattered throughout their sites, there's decorative paving at all the entrances. So here's the amenity site for the family apartment component. It includes a turf area, tot lot, pool, ramadas, and various other amenity installations. And this is the amenity site for the senior apartments. It also includes a pool, turf area, ramadas, and other various installed amenities. The architecture per the PAD encourages a ranch style that is consistent with historic Arizona architecture in this area. I'll go through a few of the elevations and give some viewpoint perspectives of these. So this is what would be visible from Cotton Lane. These are the family apartments, and maximum height on the family apartments is 40 feet 2 inches. This is what would be visible from the primary entryway where that roundabout is. The maximum height of the townhomes is 30 feet 4 inches. And here are the senior apartments. The maximum height of these is 49 feet 4 inches. The PAD allows for up to a maximum of 50 feet on the western half of this site where this is located. And then this is what would be visible from the properties to the west without the site wall and line of trees helping to decrease the visual impact of that. So to go over the architecture in general, the Truman Ranch Marketplace PAD calls for tall ranch-style architectural design. Forms, shapes, and materials are to be of historic Arizona farms. They're to require a variety of gable and shed roof lines, and building materials should include common block, split-face block, stone, steel, wood, and corrugated metal. So what is provided with this site plan? There is a variety of roof lines, including shed, gable, mansard, and flat with parapet. There is a variety of materials that are conducive to the ranch or farmhouse style of architecture that includes horizontal siding and trim, vertical board and batten, stacked stone, stucco, and standing seam metal. And I will note that the stacked stone and the stucco are primarily on that first floor to help give that pedestrian feel and kind of break up the height of the buildings. Colors included are earth tone as per the PAD and consistent with the ranch style architecture. And the buildings are also decorated with window shutters and various decorative panels and pillars. And just to note, the provided architectural design is consistent with other developments that we've seen in the area that go for that ranch or farmhouse architectural style. This is the pedestrian circulation plan. The PAD calls for strong pedestrian circulation, both internal and external to the site. So as you'll see here, everything in the yellow is behind the gates that will secure these two developments. The pink circulation is those that would be accessible to the public, and then the blue is what is within the public right-of-way. These are a variety of 5 and 7 foot sidewalks as required by the PAD, and then the dots shown on this the red dots are shown to indicate the pedestrian gates. This is the wall plan for the site. It uses a combination of full view fencing, combination wall and fencing, and then some solid masonry 6-foot block walls for screening purposes. There's also a variety of pool fencing, gating, and both vehicular and pedestrian gates. But the view fencing is placed strategically to allow that view shed to adjacent developments or open spaces. And then as you can see with the wall shown in red is that solid 6-foot CMU wall that will provide that screening and buffering to the surrounding residential developments. The wall and fence designs are consistent with the architecture of the buildings and help promote that ranch style design. So they're utilizing similar earth tone colors and materials, decorative pilasters and block work. The metal work is consistent with the buildings that you've seen with some decorative metal elements and are all consistent with the overall design of the development. This is the carport plan. As you can see in the red X's, this is where the carports will be located within the parking lot. The applicant has elected to go with a flat style carport along the western boundary so as to reduce any visual impact to the developments to the west. This will keep that height down to a maximum of 9 feet. The rest of the carports will be angled and outfitted with solar panels. The lighting plan was reviewed by staff for consistency with both Chapter 125 and the PAD. The PAD encourages decorative fixtures that help complement the architecture and pedestrian scale design. You can see the pictures here of the decorative fixtures that the applicant is including in the site. The PAD also requires that the foot candle readings at the south and west property lines be 0.0. The photometric plan has been reviewed for compliance with that. And the PAD also talks about pole and mounting heights being appropriate for pedestrian scale. The pole heights range from 7 to 15 feet throughout the site. Also within the PAD, there is an allowance for if parking is requested to be reduced from the Chapter 125 requirements to be more conducive to inappropriate development that is not overparked. So the applicant has provided a parking study to that. And so here you can see the breakdown of what Chapter 125 requires and what they're providing in the distance. So the family apartments at 388 dwelling units would be required 873 total spaces. The site is providing 805, which is a difference of 68 spaces. The senior apartments includes 211 dwelling units, which equates to 475 required spaces. They're providing 408 spaces, which is 67. It's a difference of 67. And in total, there's 599 dwelling units, which would require 1348 spaces. They're providing 1,213 spaces, which is a reduction of 135 spaces. So in total, the Chapter 125 would require a ratio of 2.25 across the board. They are providing an average of 2.07, which is a reduction of 10%. The parking study included some observed demands across other similar developments, as well as some data from the Urban Land Institute. So the observed demand found that across the multifamily sites that they surveyed, a ratio of 1.22 occupied stalls per unit was found for the multifamily, and then in the senior, it came out to 0.76 occupied stalls per dwelling unit. So the total predicted demand utilizing this information for this site was 635 parking spaces, which they are exceeding. And then they utilized the Urban Land Institute predicted demand. So for the family apartments, the predicted demand would be 817 spaces, and for the senior apartments, it would be 172 spaces, for a total of 989 spaces. So what they're providing is a surplus of 224 spaces over the data that they collected. So just to overview the requirements within the PAD, it encourages an architectural design of the ranch style consistent with the historic developments of this area. They are providing that with what I showed before with the elevations. They're meeting all the minimum setbacks of the PAD. They're exceeding the landscape buffer of 22 feet. It varies across that frontage of Cotton Lane, but they are at a minimum of 25. They're providing landscaping that is consistent with the PAD by utilizing low water use plants and some accent planting throughout that help reflect the historic land use. Their screen walls are consistent with both the architecture and the standards of the PAD. As stated before, their lighting promotes the ranch appeal with the decorative light fixtures and not contributing to pollution by having 0 foot candle readings at the south and west and keeping lighting to a minimum. Internal and external pedestrian connectivity is provided as shown on the pedestrian connectivity plan, and they are providing plazas and activity areas throughout the site. As stated before, they have decorative pavement for all of the entryways to help not only meet the PAD requirement for the entry treatments, but also to help boost that overall design. And then the overall site plan has been found to be in compliance with the preliminary development plan. Staff is recommending approval of the subject case, subject to stipulations A through G. And the applicant does have a short presentation that they would like to give, if you so please.
Yes, we'd like to hear from the applicant. And
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, first, I understand a few of you are terming out here at the end of June, so thank you for all your work
can
for
I
the
get you to-
Commission.
I'm so sorry. Can I get you to state your name
Yes,
and your
my
address, please?
apologies. Owen Metz, I'm with Dominium. Our address is 9000 East Pima Center Parkway in Scottsdale.
Thank you.
So thank you for your time, and thank you to Trevor and staff for all the work they put into this one. We've been working on this one for approaching 3 years. Last time we were here before you was for a preliminary development plan. And so I'm excited we're here before you. I'll try to be brief because I know it's getting a little late. So since the last time, we've gotten a lot of public comments along the way. We've had a few neighborhood meetings. We've gotten comments from staff, comments from council, and comments from this commission. And we've really taken it to heart. We've read the PAD again, front to back. I've done it myself a few times to try to give direction to our team to improve this site plan from even what you saw in the PDP. And I think the elevations and renderings even of what we have is showing that change. So we've taken a lot of time to make those significant changes. And a lot of that was sort of regarding the vision and sort of the hope for the area. Obviously, this is from 2008, it's 2023, so 15-year-old vision, but we tried our best to accommodate that vision where we could in the site. And most of that's in moving site plan, but then really in the design of the buildings themselves. So we've modified where buildings are located. We've pulled out the amenity space in the senior building that normally is inside the main elements of the senior building. We've actually pulled that out into a separate sort of farmhouse, ranch house style building that's adjacent and connected to the apartment building as well. So some little changes that may not show up on a large site plan, but I think when you look at elevations, you look at the overall package, we hope shows that we are trying to accommodate comments and requests from the public that we received. We also modified some buildings and moved them as far away as we could within meeting the requirements. I think you see that with setbacks and where we're exceeding the requirements of the PAD. And so we've also moved buildings away from the Truman residence to our west and the homestead there. So we have a minimum 200 to 250 foot setback from any building to that property, in that home, excuse me, not necessarily the property line. And then we've also pushed where the 50 foot is allowed. We've done that only on the senior building on the very southwest side and pushed that. It's over 500 feet from Mr. Truman's house and the homestead to our west. So I think you'll see as you get into the presentation, we've got a few renderings fresh off the press that weren't available in time for the staff report to show what this might look like. Sometimes elevations don't give it full justice, but to show what that might look at. And I want to just point to a few sections we tried to, and our design team tried to accommodate when we're looking back. So this is on page 9 of the PAD. Trevor touched on this, but quote from the 2008 PAD, "The architectural character for the Truman Ranch will reflect the forms, shapes, and materials of historic Arizona farms, acknowledging the former land use. A variety of gable and shed roof lines can create facades to define identity and human scale while providing shade and protection for the entries and walkways." So I think our elevations design have accommodated that. And then on page 13, it goes on to say, "By utilizing the tall ranch-style architectural design, this project will block both light pollution and noise generated by the auto dealerships and increase traffic on Cotton Lane." So I think as you see what Susan will present from our team that's working on this, that we've really met that requirement. Trevor's touched on where we exceed the minimum setbacks, exceed the minimum open space. And I'll just touch briefly on the parking. There's a lot of data there. I can assure you we're not interested in building an apartment building that's underparked. We own and manage about 40,000 apartment units across the country. I think what we're asking for, a 10% reduction, is very reasonable. Quite honestly, it's still a lot more than we need. But if there's concerns there, I can get into more of the data after our presentation on why we think that's enough. And what it does allow us to do is have more open space, which I think you saw in the site plan, of more open space for our residents and for folks living there. And it's also by doing that, we've minimized the height that is allowed on that west half of the site. So none of our family buildings have exceeded or gone anywhere near the 50-foot allowance. We could go another 10 feet taller theoretically, but by limiting that height, spreading things out a little bit, and getting to a number of parking that we think's certainly justifiable, I think you'll see that we are trying to be sensitive, but also accommodate the future and not add to the heat island effect, not add unnecessary asphalt that we truly don't need under that PAD requirement. So with that, thank you for staff, and after our presentation from Susan, I hope you'll support staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. This agenda item does not require a public hearing, but we would like to hear from any members of the public who would like to address the commission. Alyssa, do we have anyone? Oh,
We still have a few components of our applicant presentation.
I apologize.
If that's okay. No, it's okay.
It's okay. Can I get
We're
your-
tag teaming tonight. So
Can I get your name, please?
Yes. So my name is Susan Demmett with Gamage and Burnham, and on behalf of Dominium this evening. My address is 40 North Central Avenue in Phoenix. So Trevor gave a great, thorough presentation. I don't want to repeat, all of the detail that he went through tonight. There are a few things that I want to touch on, and then I'm going to ask our traffic engineer, Chuck Wright, to come up and actually talk to you about the parking reduction and the analysis that he did for us. So let me just sort of move forward a little bit. One of the things I, do want to touch on because of the attention that this project has received both before the PDP approval, which happened in August of last year, and in the time since. This site plan application is, generally considered an administrative, non-public hearing type approval. We did not have any requirements or obligations to do any community outreach or notifications regarding this hearing tonight, but we did do that. We have maintained a project website since the August approval. For this project. This has been updated over time. We recently updated it with all of the documents relevant to the site plan, public hearing dates, and all those things were published. And so prior to the hearing tonight, we did voluntarily send out emails and letters to everyone who had been on our notification list that we had collected through the prior PDP approval process. So we did send out 136 physically mailed letters to residents and stakeholders in the area. And we also sent out 125 emails prior to the hearing tonight, and directing everyone to the website and letting them know that this Planning Commission hearing was happening this evening. So I wanted to make sure you're aware that we did that. And then I'm going to just, the only other thing I'm really going to show you, as Owen referenced, is we have provided and had our architectural team prepare some 3D renderings of what the buildings will look like. And you can see here, this is for the family-oriented portion of the project in the townhomes. You've got renderings of what those buildings would look like. You've got a rendering on the right that shows the entry and into the clubhouse area that just gives you a little bit better color and flavor as to what the sort of ranch and farm architectural style will look like. What the robust landscaping for this site will do over time. I think it is a point of pride for our team as far as we have over 30% open space throughout these projects as a whole, with a really robust amenity package that I would challenge you that any market rate multifamily project is on par with what we're providing here, even though this is a workforce and senior housing project. And then I think we just have one in here, but this is separately rendering of the entry and the one-story clubhouse and amenity area that Owen mentioned into the senior living component. You can see the 4-story senior living buildings in the background behind all that. We do have Brent Fike from Todd & Associates is here and can answer any architectural related questions if you have those. The last thing that I wanted to just reinforce, and Trevor included this in his presentation, is we have done intentionally very thorough review of the PAD as we prepare this site plan, and going back to ensure that we are complying with all of the requirements in the Truman Ranch PAD. And this is just our simplified chart to show you that from a land use standpoint, we comply. The multifamily uses that are proposed are allowed by the PAD. We're meeting the density requirements. We're meeting our setback requirements. We're substantially exceeding landscaping requirements. And the only modification that we're requesting with the site plan approval is the parking reduction, which was contemplated specifically in the PAD. We provided a parking study along with our submittal to address, our justification as far as right sizing the parking, and that would be the 10% reduction that Trevor had spoken about. And so with that, I am going to ask Chuck Wright from Kimley Horn, who is now sitting right behind me, to come up and chat with you a little bit about the parking reduction.
Chuck, can I get your name and address, please?
Certainly. Vice Chair, Commissioners, my name is Chuck Wright with Kimley Horn and Associates, 7740 North 16th Street in Phoenix. I know there's been a fair amount of information provided, but the real justification or the basis for this is the parking code for the city is very uniform, 2.25 per unit. And there's a lot more nuance in some projects, specifically related to the senior living versus standard multifamily product, and as well as the number of bedrooms and the different parking demand based upon the number of bedrooms. Okay. There we go. One of the things that we looked at is other projects that with similar characteristics. So these are other Dominion projects in various locations. And you can see that the parking in these developments are significantly less than the 2.2. And we didn't really stop here because this was just one data point that we looked at. But we did want to look and see what products similar to this were utilizing in terms of actual parking. We also looked at different jurisdictions and that maybe had a little bit more refined parking code that addressed the number of bedrooms, which is a fairly significant component in the parking demand. And so you can see there's some very wide differences between the parking required for 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units in other parking codes. Surprise doesn't have that refinement in their code. It's very uniform. But we really weren't trying to rely on other people's codes alone as well. And the Urban Land Institute is a group that collects a lot of information about parking nationwide, provides some guidance on determining parking requirements. And we also reviewed that. And they do have some refinements based upon the senior living versus more traditional multifamily, and as well as the information on the unit, the parking requirement based upon the bedrooms. And so we took a look at that and made the calculations to see what the ULI standard would show for the mix of uses that are being provided here. And what we found was that even the ULI requirement was significantly less than what's being provided for the site. So we looked at really 3 different sources: what's been done for projects very similar to this, what's been done at other jurisdictions, and what's been done more on a national basis. And really found that when you refine the parking demand for the specific uses, addressing the issue of senior living, as well as the different parking demand for the different number of bedroom counts, that the proposed parking is anticipated to be more than adequate, and hopefully will reduce the potential for there to be unused parking spaces that aren't necessary for the residents of the site. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
So with Chuck's comments on parking, I think that's what we wanted to present to you initially. I think we'll reserve any additional time for questions or responses after you've had public comment. I do want to go back and just really quickly reinforce, as Chuck discussed this, in his comments is the projects that we've listed here on the comparable slide. These are all Dominion projects that are either operational, entitled, or under construction here in the valley. The Vista Ridge project, the three in the middle, the Vista Ridge project, which is in the city of Phoenix, the Desert Sky project, which is also in the city of Phoenix, and the Glendale 67 Flats Juniper Square project is in the city of Glendale. Those are all very similar projects to the one that is proposed here because they have both a senior living and a family-oriented component. And so you can see the parking ratios that both Glendale and the city of Phoenix approved for those projects. And those actually, both of those, I don't want to say this about Glendale, but Phoenix did not require a parking waiver or reduction at all. The 1.37 and 1.7 or 1.73 and 2 spaces per DU provided for those Phoenix projects conformed with their code sort of right out of the gate. But I wanted to give you that metric because I do think that's a good comparable, because those projects are very, very similar in size and scale to what is proposed here. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions now, and we can come back up later.
We'll probably have you come back up later. We'd like to hear from the
Yep.
public. So again, this matter does not require a public hearing. However, we are interested in hearing from the public. Alyssa, do we have anyone who would like to speak to us?
Yes, we have 2. So first we will call up Steve Truman.
Mr. Truman and the other individual who'd like to speak to us, we're going to have your comments be about 3 to 4 minutes, if you can keep them in that range, please.
Okay, I believe I can. My name is Stephen Truman. My current address is 2415 Gates Avenue, Redondo Beach, California. I used to reside on the Truman Ranch, where my brother does reside now. So but I am co-owner of the Truman Ranch. And as you see, my name is on this project, unfortunately, because this is not what we had planned for when we originally set up this PAD and put a lot of work into it back in 2008. But what we are here today is to talk about this current site plan. Just about 11 months ago, we were here for the PDP. And yes, that's preliminary development plan. This is the final site plan. This is supposed to have everything. City staff says compliance, 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 which means that everything is met. And what I say is that everything is not met. And therefore, it needs to be further enhanced, further studied, and true compliance achieved before this commission will allow it to proceed to City Council. So let me address 3 main issues that I see with it. So staff report states that the site plan has been found to be compliant with the PAD. However, of the 81 requirements within the Truman Marketplace PAD, by my analysis, there are still 61 which are neither not addressed at all or not demonstrating compliance. Some example, signage. You had a very vigorous discussion about signage. There's a lot of requirements within that PAD about signage. There's not a single mention, staff report, or presentation by the applicant regarding signage. How can that be compliant if those requirements are not addressed at all for the site plan? There's no other opportunity to come back and say, yeah, we'll get to it at the next version. This is the site plan. This is the final version. A lot of discussion was also made about open area and pedestrian walkways, etc. There is a specific requirement in the PAD for shade structures along walkways. None of that is available. We all know how hot it gets here, and there's going to be young kids in the tot lots, a lot of movement back and forth between the buildings, their residences, and where they are going to play and where they're going to be. and there's no shade structures noted at all. That is a hard requirement within the PAD, not addressed at all. Secondly, staff report states compliance with city code. Now, as we learned during the PDP review, this project is bound by Chapter 125 of City Code, which is now repealed and replaced with current LDO, but compliance must be with Chapter 125. There's a lot of discussion about how the setbacks per the PAD are met. But, excuse me, in addition, Chapter 125 has an additional setback requirement. Specifically, 125-185 G2 states, for apartment buildings, parking of motor vehicles shall not be allowed within the required front or corner side setbacks. That is within Chapter 125. That is the city code under which this project has been moving forward from way back. Now, I know there's different code now, but we've been told multiple times it meets Chapter 125. This has not been addressed at all, and I think it's very clear that these are apartment buildings and there is parking within the required setback. And the rendering specifically says, I believe, that the front of the building faces the parking. So how is that compliant with parking within the necessary setback?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Truman. We're about at the time limit there.
Can I have one more statement, please?
One more statement.
Okay. Staff reports compliance with the general plan. No density analysis letter from Luke Air Force Base is provided. That's required within the general plan. And specifically, during City Council meeting last year, Councilwoman Klein specifically ordered that a new density acceptance analysis letter be provided, be worked out between the city and Luke Air Force Base. There is not one available here. So not only not meet the general plan, but specific direction from Councilwoman Klein. So thank you very much for your consideration. I hope these are good reasons to give you some pause to think that maybe there still needs to be a bit more work done for the site plan, final site plan, that let's make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. The project is a project, but make sure it is done properly and it really is what you and everybody else says it is and says it will be for our community. Thank you for your consideration.
Next, we'll have James Truman.
Good evening, Commission. My name is James Truman. I live at 17301 West Waddell Road. Home where we've been for 75 years, and we have some new neighbors coming in, I see. I've lived in a nice, typical rural farmhouse for 75 years, and I don't know why anybody is calling these things a typical rural farmhouse, but I'm not an architect and I'm not deciding who's making these decisions. But whatever, we were kind of short-sighted with this notice that came 4 working days ago, that this meeting was happening. So we tried to scramble and we go on the city website and we learned that this thing is posted as a non-public hearing. To me, that means the public is not invited to participate. Therefore, we thought we weren't even going to come. And I'm sure because it was posted as a non-public hearing, many people who've been opposed to this project for a couple of years haven't shown up. Non-public means we don't get to talk. But you've allowed us to talk. I don't know why, but we appreciate that. So we're going to give our things. So especially after the P&Z meeting, when we had the preliminary plat discussions, we were told by Mr. Bash and the city attorney Van Ripper that we would have plenty of opportunity to be involved with the planning process of this project as it moved forward in public hearing meetings. And then all of a sudden, we've got this non-public hearing notice. So that creates a lot of confusion here. So moving on, we have opportunity to show you, which you all have, some photographs of a couple of site plan options presented to us by the senior Dominion planning team. They asked if they could come to our home, talk about this. They wanted to be good neighbors, very on. This was in 2021, 2 years ago. They showed up there. They had these nice photographs. Trumans, we can help soften the impact on you folks who've been here a long time by offering you this different set of plan layouts, I guess I'm going to call them. We thought that was wonderful. And we said, we'd love to see your option 2 going into effect. That was fine. That's not what we're seeing today at all. So we wonder what happened here. Why did these guys offer this to us and then didn't produce it in the end? A couple of things I want to talk about specifically that affect me personally, because I live in that house right there. The wall is mentioned in the PAD of being 9 feet high. In the proposal mentioned in staff report, the developer wants to put a 6-foot wall. You may have noticed I'm pretty tall. My brother is a lot taller. We can look over a 6-foot wall. Give me a break, people. That wall needs to be 9 feet tall. We are a farm, been in operation for like 100 years. We work at night, we work in the morning, we have lights, we have noise, and you're gonna put a 6-foot fence there? No, it's gotta be 9 feet. You gotta protect them from us and us from them. For noise, they're gonna make noise coming in at night, working that trash can up and down and dropping the lid on that community trash can. I can just hear it now. We've been pretty quiet around there, as you might know. We don't have neighbors. So that fence has to be 9 feet high. The trees and the landscaping, I appreciate this discussion of the trees. I appreciate the type of varieties of trees. I would like to plead to the staff to make the tree spacing much closer than normal arborists are going to recommend. Because if you put them on normal spacing for aesthetics, they are not going to create a nice block to protect them from looking at our junky farmhouse and us from looking at a 3-foot apartment complex. Give me a break. What a simple process to eliminate. But you look at the drawing, there's gaps between those trees. So we're going to be looking in people's yards, I mean not the yards, but windows, and they're going to be looking in our yards. So please make those trees in a situation close together so they grow together quickly, and have them put in large trees first. Don't put in small trees. Oh, don't worry about it, Truman. In 20 years, these trees will be big enough to protect your viewscape. Hello, I'm 76. I won't be here. Make them put in bigger trees. Specifically in the PAD, where did I have this note here? It says the PAD calls for elements of both an Arizona farm and a citrus farm. I had to laugh at that. As a lifetime citrus farmer, and I'm closest neighbor to this project by far, because I'm literally within a couple 100 feet of these big buildings. And you can imagine my opinion of that. But be that is what it is. I'm really disappointed to not see any trees in this landscape plan. So they're not in compliance with many conditions of the PAD, like my brother brought up. And if they're not in compliance, why does staff keep saying they are? So with these points that we brought up, you can't just go along with what Trevor says. I mean, I appreciate Trevor's writing and all that, and his opinions of this, that, and the other, but dig into this a little bit deeper. We've come before you to point out some things that we think are not correct in this situation. We're not fighting the development. We're just fighting how it's done. These guys are professionals. They do it every day. We don't. The traffic, and not the traffic, but the parking thing. Hello, how many things do they have of their own facilities that they're using as reference points. Doesn't that sound a little odd? Please, consider these things. They're real. And if you're looking for real things, to not can the project's going forward. We know that. But we want it to be done properly, so this is a nice facility in our community that we can live next to. So just, you know, I don't think you can do an approval tonight. There's too many ifs out there. And these are the ones that we've just come up with in the last couple of days. You know, it's difficult for us to study these things because we're farmers. I'm a farmer, he's an electrician. Or no, he's not an electrician, he's an electrical engineer. I'm sorry. So anyway, please consider our points of views on these things and don't approve this project tonight. Make them do a little bit more work. I think there's some real flaws in this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Truman. Would the applicant like to say anything further? I'm sure we'll have questions, but.
Thank you. I'll just would like to just briefly address a couple of the comments that Steve and James both brought up. On the signage front, you know, signage is reviewed against your code. We are not proposing any deviations from the signage. It's not necessarily a component of site plan packages. Typically, you know, that's something that will go through a separate review process with staff down the road. And so our signage will comply with the city code requirements. There was a comment about shading, open space and walkways. The PAD, you know, does talk about that, and we have provided a combination, and these details were in the site plan package, of shading elements, trellises, and landscaping trees to provide shading for open space areas and walkways throughout the project. As far as the Luke Air Force Base letter, Luke provided a letter with the PDP last year. Nothing has substantively changed. We actually have less units than what were included and addressed in the Luke letter, which they had a finding that there was no negative impact on their operations. This site plan application was routed to Luke Air Force Base as part of the review process, and it is noted in the staff report they did not provide any additional comments to that. On the western property boundary along Mr. Truman's, particularly where his residence is located, we are providing 36-inch box trees along that edge, which is a fairly substantial tree size. And along the western property frontage, sort of just along where the Truman homestead is located, we have more than 20 trees planned along that edge. And we believe that in combination with the wall actually far exceeds, you know, what you would typically see, and will provide a good, you know, solid buffer with the wall, but also the trees provide sort of a more natural organic feel. These are 36-inch boss trees. We talked about the species. They have a 15-foot canopy on each of those trees. And so through our direction to our landscape architect, we believe that that's going to provide a very sufficient buffering and screening element along that edge. So I will save any other comments for questions that you might have.
Thank you. Comments from commissioners?
One question I'd have is the fencing that was mentioned by Mr. Truman, a 9-foot fence that was in the, what?
The 9-foot versus the 6-foot that
Yes.
we've provided. So we had specific discussions with our design team about, and actually city staff, about the wall and how to handle that edge. A 9-foot wall, if you've ever seen one, I mean, and I understand, the Trumans are not height challenged; they are a tall family, but a 9-foot wall really starts to feel very ominous, and we don't want to say it looks like a prison wall, but that is a substantially tall wall, and does not provide we don't think the benefit is there in adding that additional 3 feet. I mean, the route that we have provided is to provide a screen of trees along that entire edge, 36-inch box trees that are going to far exceed the height of that wall, and that we think that is a more pedestrian-friendly an appropriate, way to handle screening and buffering. And it looks like Owen would like to supplement that comment, so I'm going to let you talk.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Chapman, I think too, the 9 foot is just, it may be provided. There's no strict requirement in the PAD to have to do 9 foot. Just as you may go up to 9 foot. As Susan mentioned, we don't think that's appropriate. I can understand the concerns, but it does become a very stark type of wall. And when you layer in carports, you layer in 6 foot walls, very typical, even with closely provided homes that are 2 or 3 stories tall. It's a very typical thing in Arizona, in this community, in this neighborhood adjacent that we share walls with existing neighborhoods already that are built to those same standards. So it's not out of place, and we don't need to go to the 9 foot. We just could go to if we chose.
Is there, just as a quick question, along the Truman Ranch portion of this on the west side, is there any consideration of any variability in that would be considered or not? I know that in building the brick or fence wall, 6 foot is very different than building at 8, significantly, financially and otherwise, significantly more. Maybe what, 2 to 3 times more than it does to build a 6 foot fence, same distance, linear. And so I'm wondering if it's just a financial thing, or is it something that could be considered?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Chapman, I don't know the cost difference. I think it's our experience and just what's typical in the market. Quite honestly, when we start weighing things, we try to balance visual aesthetics. In the PDP or in the PAD, it talks about buildings themselves providing blockage to light and noise along Cotton Road and to the Prasada to the east. So when you factor in, from our standpoint, trees and vegetation and shade are a much more appropriate screen and vegetation buffer, and we'd rather spend our dollars on open space and trees. We purposely, in the site plan, as you can see, the 2 buildings, I guess the mouse here, that's the approximate location of Mr. Truman's homestead. So you can see even from the sight line, we purposely moved buildings away from there. Our site plan at the PDP had a north-south facing building in one of our larger 36-unit buildings. So we've entirely relocated that building. So we've tried to address it through a number of means, and going to a 9-foot stark wall sends a different message than trying to just provide with landscaping and other screening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments or questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosenbaum.
My grandfather moved into Surprise in 1952. They used to shoe horses on Grand Avenue. We don't have very much historical property left in Surprise. We've outgrown it. We've knocked it down. The Truman Ranch is one of the last places that we have available. Excuse me. Anything that can be done to keep the feel and keep the history of Surprise, which was a major agricultural area, I think is going to be to the benefit of the population here, and hopefully to the benefit of the development. And anything that can do that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
I just I have another comment about the traffic study. I did a cursory look in reading about national parking, and it varies so much across our nation that depending on whether it's commercial or residential, multifamily, it's from 0 to 3. I mean, some people have actually not required it at all in certain cities across the nation. And the research just varies so much that it just, to me, almost impossible not to be able to write a report on any argument that you would want to make with respect to parking But in looking at this parking situation, that I've really feel that what is being presented is generous compared to many of the other things I've seen across the nation in terms of what's being provided. I think that most of the things that I read are not become anywhere from 1 to 1.4, maybe up to 2 would be high, but if anywhere from 1 to 1.5 would be more than ample, and they're providing 2.0 in terms of parking. Now, how that parking is distributed according to the concerns that have by Mr. Truman is another issue, but the parking seemed to be ample as far as I'm concerned. And that's all.
Any additional comments?
Could I say something? They had an opportunity to rebut what I said. Could I
Well-
rebut what they said?
Well, Mr. Truman, at this point, because it's their application, we give them an opportunity to go on ahead and speak to any concerns that have been raised, and they've done so. So we are at the point where we're discussing and about ready to vote here. I'll tell you, well, hold on one second, sir. Mr. Truman,
I'm pretty much involved in this project.
wait, you're going to want to hear what I have to say, so hold on just a second. Mr. Truman, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to sum up your concerns for us, okay? Why don't you come on up here?
Okay, thank you. All right, so obviously I'm a farmer. I know a lot about trees and what have you. So when Ms. Dimmitt says, oh, we're putting in 36-inch boxes, I'm buying 48-inch boxes to protect me from the other development right next to us with 2-story homes. When you put in trees, they're usually pruned up from the bottom quite high, right? Trees grow high, there's nothing on the bottom. So we have a citrus grove right there next to that thing. Why can't an 8-foot wall or 9-foot wall be built there? These trees can be naked from the trunk to 10 feet. It wouldn't bother us. But if you got a 6-foot wall and that trunk is naked up to 8 feet, it's going to bother us. That's one thing. The wall, aesthetics of the wall, they don't live there. When Mr. Matt says, oh, our people find it unattractive. They're not going to live there. I'm going to live there. They're going to have people living in that apartment where that wall is 10 feet or 12 feet. It's right at the back of a parking structure. It's covered with trees and everything. The height of the wall isn't going to bother those residents or tenants, but it'll bother me.
Thank you, Mr. Truman.
Consider that. And it
Appreciate
is in the pad.
Understood.
You know, that's compliance issues.
Thank you. Trevor, you got comments, or you just coming up?
Just if you had any questions.
Okay, I don't. Here's my comments before I look for a motion here. I appreciate the efforts that have been made by the applicant to try and accommodate the concerns that have been raised. We recognize that this is a sensitive issue and a sensitive development for our community. I also recognize the parking accommodation that's being requested here. And I think considering what we're looking at with the senior living facility and the likelihood that there probably won't be a need for two vehicles per dwelling unit is a real probability. And so I agree with Commissioner Chapman in that I think that the parking is appropriately scaled. With regard to the Trumans, I understand, sympathize, and empathize that this isn't what you were hoping would go in next door. And to many, to the extent that we're losing a little bit of history along with this as what's been deemed as progress is coming in, that's a sad tale and something that we wish could be preserved while gaining the benefits of workforce housing. But nonetheless, based on what we're seeing here, and all I can do is encourage the applicants as you put in those trees to make sure you get big ones, pick the big ones and put them along Mr. Truman's boundary line there so we can get some coverage and make sure that he's taken care of and that your residents don't necessarily have to hear his tractors running either.
Mr. Chair, I do
Mr.
have a
Chairman.
question that I know that this project also has a commercial side to it. And I noticed that usually when we're looking at projects, this one happens to be separated. So the site plan for the commercial part is yet to come? Is that?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair, Commissioner Chapman. So all of the commercial developments will have to go through a site plan review, and many of them do. The uses that we've seen require a conditional use permit, so those will come through the conditional use permit process. So
So-
the commercial component of this overall development is separate from this item tonight.
But before anything can proceed, our understanding is that from the city council and our recommendation is that they are coterminous or they're going to be in concert with each other in the development
That is correct.
process.
Correct.
Okay. I have no other questions.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Then I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the site plan for the Truman Ranch Marketplace Family and Senior Apartments, subject to stipulations A through G as outlined in the staff report.
I'll second.
Having a motion and a second, please cast your votes.
Motion passes with 5 votes in favor.
Having completed all the regular agenda items, is there any additional business or future agenda items? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, get a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned.